When nurse Camille Reyes brought billionaire Douglas Hart back from the dead, she thought she was saving a life. She had no idea she was signing her own death warrant. Love stories aren't supposed to start with cardiac arrest and end with murder confessions. But when you fall for the son of Boston's most dangerous man, normal goes out the window fast. Some hearts are worth saving. Others should have stayed stopped. This is the story of a heartbeat that changed everything, and the woman brave enough to make it count. The alarm pierced through Boston General's cardiac wing like a scream. Camille Reyes dropped her coffee and ran, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Room 302. The new admission. She'd seen him wheeled in 20 minutes ago, an older man in an expensive suit unconscious, his face gray as winter sky. She burst through the door to find chaos. The patient was flatlining. His designer tie hung loose around his neck, and his gold watch caught the harsh fluorescent light as the defibrillator charged. "Clear!" Dr. Martinez shouted. The body jerked. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Camille stepped forward. She'd seen this before, too many times. The machine wasn't the problem. "Let me try CPR. Sometimes the old-fashioned way works better." She placed her hands on his chest and began compressions. 1, 2, 3. His ribs felt fragile under her palms, like bird bones. But she pressed harder. Lives hung on pressure and timing, not gentleness. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. 30 more. The monitor beeped once. Then again. A rhythm appeared on the screen, weak, but steady. "We got him back," Dr. Martinez said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Camille stepped away, her hands shaking slightly. She always shook after bringing someone back. It never got easier. "What's his name?" "Douglas Hart. 78. Pacemaker failure." The name hit her like cold water. Hart. As in Hartbridge Holdings. As in the billionaire family that owned half of downtown Boston. She'd saved one of the most powerful men in the city with her bare hands. "His son's on the way," Dr. Martinez added. Camille nodded and adjusted the 4 drip. Power and money couldn't buy you a heartbeat when it stopped. She'd learned that lesson working in the ER for 12 years. Death was the great equalizer. It didn't care about your bank account. But the living? They cared about everything else. 20 minutes later, she was checking Douglas Hart's vitals when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Expensive shoes on cheap linoleum. The kind of footsteps that echoed with authority. Logan Hart stepped into the room like he owned it, which, given his family's donations to the hospital, he probably did. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than Camille made in 3 months. His eyes swept the room, taking in the machines, the tubes, his unconscious father. Then his gaze found hers. "You're the nurse who saved him," he said. It wasn't a question. "I did my job." Camille kept her voice steady. She'd dealt with wealthy families before. They either treated you like furniture or like a miracle worker. She preferred furniture. "Dr. Martinez said you performed CPR for 8 minutes. Someone had to." He studied her face. His eyes were dark blue, almost navy, and they seemed to see too much. "What's your name?" "Camille Reyes." "Thank you, Camille Reyes." The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. She ignored it. Rich men were trouble, especially rich men who looked at you like they wanted to figure you out. "He's stable now," she said, turning back to the monitors. "But it was close. Another few minutes and... But you didn't let that happen." She faced him again. "Your father's strong. He fought to come back." "Did he?" Logan moved closer to the bed. He looked so small. That surprised her. Most people in his position would have been barking orders, demanding private rooms, calling in specialists from New York. Instead, Logan Hart looked lost. "The next 24 hours are critical," Camille said softly. "But his heart rhythm is improving." Logan nodded, still staring at his father. I should call the board. Cancel my meetings. You should sit with him. Talk to him. Patients in comas can often hear more than we think. What would I say? The question hung in the air between them. Camille had heard this before. Family members who realized they'd never learned how to talk to the people they loved. Start with hello, she said. Logan didn't leave the hospital for 3 days. Camille noticed because she worked the day shift in cardiac care, and every time she passed room 302, he was there. Sometimes reading papers, sometimes staring at his phone, but mostly just watching his father breathe. On the 3rd day, she found him in the hallway at 2 a.m. She'd come back to check on another patient. Mrs. Chen in 304 was having trouble sleeping, but Logan was sitting in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs, his head in his hands. Can't sleep? She asked. He looked up. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled. The perfect businessman facade had cracked. I keep thinking about what you said. About talking to him. And we never really talked. Not about anything that mattered. Logan rubbed his face. Do you know what the longest conversation we ever had was about? A merger. 47 minutes of discussing whether to buy a company in Seattle. Camille sat down beside him. The chair was as uncomfortable as it looked. What would you want to talk about now? I don't know. That's the problem. They sat in silence for a moment. The hospital at night had its own rhythm. Soft beeps, distant conversations, the hum of machines keeping people alive. My mother died when I was 15, Logan said suddenly. Car accident. Dad never talked about it. Just sent me to boarding school a week later. Said I needed to focus on my future. I'm sorry. He loved her, I think. But after she died, it was like he forgot how to love anything except the company. Camille watched his profile in the dim hallway light. Maybe he didn't forget. Maybe he just got scared. Of what? Of losing someone again. Logan turned to look at her. Is that what you think? That he's not just a cold bastard. I think people are complicated. Even cold bastards. That made him smile. Just barely, but it was there. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone who would tell me everything would be fine. Someone who would make it simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, he agreed. It's not. The next morning, Camille arrived to find Logan sitting beside his father's bed, talking quietly. She couldn't hear the words, but she could see the difference in his posture. Less rigid. More human. Douglas Hart opened his eyes that afternoon. Where am I? Douglas Hart's voice was rough from the breathing tube, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Boston General, Logan said. You had a cardiac arrest. Your pacemaker failed. Douglas tried to sit up, then fell back against the pillows. How long? 4 days. The Brennan deal is handled. Dad, you need to rest. Douglas's eyes found Camille, who was adjusting his four. You're the nurse. Yes, sir. You saved my life. I did my job. He studied her for a long moment. I know who you are now. Camille Reyes. 12 years at Boston General. Grew up in Roxbury. Mother died of cancer when you were 22. No husband, no kids. The room went cold. Camille's hands stilled on the 4-line. Excuse me. I have people look into anyone who gets close to my family. Dad. Logan started. It's fine, Camille said, though her voice had gone hard. I'm used to rich people thinking everyone has an agenda. Don't you? Douglas asked. If I did, don't you think I would have let you die? The question hung in the air like smoke. Douglas Hart smiled, a thin, calculating expression that reminded Camille of a shark. I suppose you would have, he said. Later, in the hallway, Logan caught up with her. I'm sorry about that. He's paranoid. Comes with the territory. The territory of having so many enemies you can't trust anyone? Something like that. Camille stopped walking. Let me ask you something, Logan. Why are you still here? Your father's awake. He's stable. Shouldn't you be back to your billion-dollar life? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I don't know. That's honest, at least. Can I buy you coffee? Real coffee, not the cafeteria stuff. I'm working. After your shift. She studied his face. There was something different about him when he wasn't trying to be the perfect son or the perfect businessman. Something genuine. One coffee, she said. But I picked the place. He smiled. Deal. The diner Camille chose was 15 minutes from the hospital, and nothing like the places Logan Hart usually went. Torn vinyl booths, fluorescent lights that flickered, and coffee that had been sitting too long on the burner. This is perfect, Logan said, sliding into the booth across from her. You're lying. Okay, the coffee is terrible, but I like watching you in your element. A greasy diner is my element? A place where you can be yourself. Not performing for anyone. That made her pause. She stirred sugar into her coffee and studied him. What makes you think I perform? Everyone performs. It's just a question of what role you're playing. And what role are you playing right now? I'm trying to figure that out. They talked for 2 hours. About everything except his money and her job. She told him about growing up with 3 brothers, about learning to throw a punch before she learned to throw a curveball. He told her about boarding school, about learning to tie a tie before he learned to tie his shoes. Do you ever wonder what you'd be doing if you weren't Douglas Hart's son? She asked. Every day. What do you think you'd be? Happy, maybe. The words sat between them like a confession. You're not happy now? Logan looked out the window at the traffic passing by. I'm successful. I'm powerful. I'm respected. But happy. He shook his head. I can't remember the last time I laughed at something that wasn't a business meeting. Laugh now. At what? I don't know. Something stupid. The way that guy over there is eating his pie like it owes him money. Logan looked where she was pointing and snorted. The man was indeed attacking his pie with suspicious intensity. See? Camille grinned. You remember how? When they finally left the diner, it was dark outside. Logan walked her to her car, a 10-year-old Honda that had seen better days. This is me, she said, fishing for her keys. Camille. She turned back. Thank you. For tonight. For my father. For. He searched for words. For treating me like a person. You are a person, Logan. Money doesn't change that. He stepped closer. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. For a moment, she wanted him to. Instead, he reached out and touched her hand. Can I see you again? This isn't a good idea. Why not? Because I'm nobody special and you're Logan Hart. Because your father already had me investigated. Because rich men don't date nurses. They marry socialites and have affairs with nurses. What if I don't want to be that kind of rich man? Then prove it. Logan proved it in small ways over the next 2 weeks. He showed up at the diner 3 more times, always ordering the terrible coffee and actually drinking it. He learned the names of the other nurses on Camille's floor and remembered them. When Mrs. Chen's family couldn't afford to stay in Boston for her surgery, Logan quietly paid for their hotel, but he never told Camille. She found out from Mrs. Chen's daughter. Why didn't you tell me? She asked him. Because then it would have been about impressing you instead of helping her. That was the moment Camille started falling for him. But Douglas Hart was watching everything. You're making a mistake, he told Logan during one of their daily visits. Which mistake is that? The nurse. She's not suitable. Logan looked up from his phone. Suitable for what? For our family. For our name. For our legacy. Maybe I don't want your legacy. Douglas's expression went cold. Then you're more foolish than I thought. The next day, Camille was called into her supervisor's office. There's been a complaint, Maria Santos said, closing the door behind them. Camille's stomach dropped. What kind of complaint? inappropriate relationship with a patient's family member, violation of professional boundaries. Who filed the complaint? Maria hesitated. It was anonymous, but Camille knew. She'd seen the look in Douglas Hart's eyes, the shark smile that meant he was moving in for the kill. What happens now? She asked. Suspension pending investigation. I'm sorry, Camille. I have to follow protocol. Camille cleaned out her locker with hands that didn't shake. She wouldn't give Douglas Hart that satisfaction. But inside, she was screaming. She'd worked 12 years to build her reputation, her career, her life. And a man who'd never worked a day in a hospital was going to destroy it all because she dared to care about his son. She was in the parking garage when Logan found her. Camille, wait. Don't. She spun around, fury blazing in her eyes. Don't you dare tell me you didn't know this was coming. I didn't. Your father had me investigated before he even woke up. You think he wasn't watching every conversation we had? Every coffee, every smile, every moment I started to believe this might be real. Logan's face went white. I'll fix this. How? By asking Daddy nicely to play fair. By whatever it takes. You want to know what it takes? Camille stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. It takes choosing me over him. It takes walking away from everything he built and everyone he owns. It takes proving that I matter more than your inheritance. She got in her car and drove away, leaving Logan standing alone in the concrete and shadows. Logan stormed into his father's hospital room like a hurricane. Call it off, he said without preamble. Douglas looked up from his tablet. Call what off? The complaint against Camille. I know it was you. Prove it. I don't need to prove it. I know you. This is exactly the kind of thing you do. Destroy someone's career because they threaten your control over me. Douglas set down his tablet. She doesn't threaten my control. She threatens your future. My future is my choice. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a lovesick fool ready to throw away everything I've built for a woman who saves lives for $40,000 a year. Maybe saving lives is worth more than making billions. Douglas laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think she loves you? She loves what you represent. Security. Status. Money. You're wrong. Am I? Then why hasn't she called you? Why isn't she fighting for this relationship? The question hit its mark. Logan had been waiting for Camille to call, to text, to show up at his penthouse demanding answers. But his phone had stayed silent. She's protecting herself, Logan said, but his voice lacked conviction. She's protecting her reputation. Which is exactly what I'm doing for you. By destroying an innocent woman's career? By preventing you from making a mistake that will haunt you for the rest of your life. Logan stared at his father, really looked at him. The pale skin, the machines keeping him stable, the expensive suit that couldn't hide how fragile he'd become. You're dying, Logan said quietly. We're all dying. The question is what we leave behind. What did you leave behind, Dad? Besides money. Douglas's expression flickered. Just for a moment, Logan saw something that might have been pain. I left behind a son who could have everything. If he's smart enough to take it. And if I'm not? If I choose her, then you'll have nothing. Because I'll make sure of it. The threat hung between them like a blade. You disown me? I protect you from yourself. Just like I protected you when your mother died. By sending me away? By never talking about her? By pretending she never existed. By making sure you became strong enough to survive without her. Logan felt something break inside his chest, a wall he'd been building for 23 years. I survived, he said. But I never lived. Not until I met her. He left his father's room and didn't look back. Camille's apartment was small and cluttered and nothing like the sterile perfection of Logan's penthouse. She was sitting on her couch in scrubs and bare feet, eating ice cream from the container and watching a medical drama that got everything wrong. The knock on her door came at 10 p.m. She looked through the peephole and saw Logan standing in the hallway, his hair messy, his tie gone, his shirt wrinkled like he'd been running his hands through his clothes. "I told you I needed space," she said through the door. "I need to tell you something. I don't want to hear it. My father threatened to disown me if I don't stop seeing you." That made her pause. And I told him to go to hell." Camille opened the door. Logan looked like he'd been in a fight, and maybe he had, just not the kind that left visible bruises. "You told Douglas Hart to go to hell?" "I told him a lot of things. Most of them true." She stepped aside to let him in. Her apartment looked even smaller with him in it, like he took up more space than his body should. "What else did you tell him?" she asked. "That you're worth more than his entire empire. That I'd rather be poor with you than rich without you. That he can keep his money and his legacy and his empire, but he can't have my life." Camille felt her walls cracking. "Logan, I'm not done." He moved closer. "I told him I love you." The words hung in the air between them. "You love me. I love how you make that face when you're thinking hard about something. I love how you always order your coffee with too much sugar. I love how you saved my father's life, even though you could have just done the minimum. I love how you make me want to be better than I am." Camille felt tears threatening. "Your father will destroy me. He'll make sure I never work as a nurse again. Not if I destroy him first." "What does that mean?" Logan pulled out his phone. "It means I've been making some calls. It means I found out things about my father that I never wanted to know. It means I have enough evidence to put him in prison for the rest of his life." Camille's blood went cold. "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that involves dead women and covered-up accidents and paid-off cops. The kind that means Douglas Hart isn't just a cold businessman, he's a killer." The file Logan showed her was thick with police reports, newspaper clippings, and bank records. 3 women over 15 years. All of them had been involved with Douglas Hart. All of them had died in accidents. The first was Rebecca Morrison, a young lawyer who'd been investigating Hartbridge Holdings for fraud. Car accident, 2009. Brakes failed on a rainy night. The second was Sarah Chen, a journalist writing a story about Hart's overseas labor practices. House fire, 2015. Electrical fault, according to the report. The third was Evelyn Sharp, Douglas Hart's secretary and sometimes lover. Single car crash, 2019. She'd hit a tree on a straight road in perfect weather. "How did you find all this?" Camille asked, her hands shaking as she turned the pages. "Private investigator. Someone who used to work for my father, actually. He kept copies of everything, insurance, I guess." "Insurance against what?" "Against Douglas Hart deciding he was a liability too." Camille closed the file. "You're going to the police?" "I'm going to the FBI. Local cops might be compromised." "Logan, this is..." She searched for words. "This is your father." "No. My father died with my mother. This man is a stranger who happens to share my DNA." She could see the pain in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched when he talked about it. "What happens to you?" "To Hartbridge Holdings." "I don't care. You should care. Thousands of people work for your company. They have families, mortgages, kids in college. So what are you saying? That I should let him get away with murder to protect their jobs?" "I'm saying maybe there's another way." Logan leaned back against her couch. "What other way?" "You take over. You run the company the right way. You make sure those women get justice, but you don't destroy everything else he built. The board will never accept me if I'm the one who turned in Douglas Hart." "Then don't turn him in." "Not yet." Logan stared at her. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you get him to confess. On tape. With witnesses. Make it so public he can't deny it or cover it up. That's incredibly dangerous. So is letting him walk away." They stared at each other across her small living room. Outside, Boston hummed with late-night traffic and distant sirens. If we do this, Logan said slowly, there's no going back. He'll know it was me. He'll try to destroy both of us. He's already trying to destroy me. This would be worse. Camille thought about the women in the file. About Rebecca Morrison, who'd been 28 and engaged to be married. About Sarah Chen, who'd had 2 kids and a Pulitzer Prize nomination. About Evelyn Sharp, who'd probably loved Douglas Hart right up until he killed her. Some things are worth the risk, she said. They spent 3 days planning it. Logan would return to his father's bedside, act like the dutiful son. He'd apologize for their fight, say he'd come to his senses about Camille. Douglas would think he'd won, and that's when he'd be most vulnerable. Camille would go back to work. Logan had already made some calls, applied some pressure. Her suspension was being reviewed. By the time they made their move, she'd be back in her scrubs, above suspicion. He'll be suspicious if you give up too easily, Camille warned. I know. I'll make him work for it. Make him think he's convincing me. And the recording? Logan patted his jacket pocket. Voice activated. FBI-grade equipment. What if he doesn't confess? What if he's too smart to incriminate himself? Then we go with plan B. Which is, we release everything we have to the press and hope it's enough. The plan was risky, but it was their only shot. Douglas Hart had spent decades covering his tracks, buying silence, eliminating threats. He'd made one mistake, though. He'd underestimated his son. The morning Logan returned to the hospital, Camille was there waiting. She looked professional, confident, untouchable. No one would have guessed she'd spent the night in his arms, planning the downfall of one of Boston's most powerful men. Mr. Hart, she said formally when Logan entered his father's room. Your father's been asking for you. Douglas looked between them, his eyes sharp. I see you've come to your senses. We talked, Logan said. She made it clear that her career comes first. Camille played her part perfectly. I have bills to pay, Mr. Hart. I can't afford to lose my job over a... She paused, as if searching for the right word. A misunderstanding. Douglas smiled his shark smile. I'm glad you're being realistic. So are we done here? Logan asked. Can we call off the dogs? That depends. Are you done with her? Logan looked at Camille one last time, letting just a flicker of regret cross his face. Yeah, we're done. Camille left the room without looking back. Phase 1 was complete. It took 2 more days for Douglas to take the bait. Logan played the role of the chastened son perfectly. He sat by his father's bedside, talked about business, asked for advice. He let Douglas think he'd broken him, that the old man had won another round in their decades-long chess match. You know, Douglas said on the 3rd day, you remind me of myself at your age. How so? Stupid about women. I thought I was in love once before your mother. A secretary at my first company. Pretty thing, but not suitable. Logan kept his voice steady. What happened to her? She had an accident. Very tragic. What kind of accident? Douglas's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. The permanent kind. Logan's blood turned to ice, but he forced himself to lean forward, to look interested. You're joking. Am I? Douglas lowered his voice to a whisper. There are 3 kinds of people in this world, son. Those who take what they want, those who complain about not having it, and those who get in the way. Guess which kind end up having accidents? Dad. Your little nurse friend was smart to back down. If she hadn't... Douglas shrugged. Well, let's just say Boston can be a dangerous city. Logan felt sick. His father wasn't just confessing to murder. He was threatening Camille. How many accidents have there been? Logan asked. Enough. Sometimes people need to disappear. Sometimes they just need to be discouraged. And you've never been caught? Douglas laughed softly. Money buys more than comfort, Logan. It buys silence. It buys cooperation. It buys justice when you need it and blindness when you don't. What about the FBI? The state police? What about them? Half of them are on my payroll, and the other half don't want to risk their careers going after a man who owns senators. Logan reached into his jacket, his fingers finding the small recording device. He'd heard enough. More than enough. That's fascinating, Dad, he said. Really fascinating. Something in his tone made Douglas pause. What's that supposed to mean? Logan pulled out the recorder and set it on the bedside table. The red light blinked steadily. It means you just confessed to 3 murders, conspiracy, and bribery. On tape. To an FBI recording device. Douglas went very still. You're bluffing. Am I? Logan stood up. Rebecca Morrison. Sarah Chin. Evelyn Sharp. Want me to keep going? His father's face had gone white as the hospital sheets. You ungrateful little. The FBI will be here in 20 minutes, Logan said. I'd use the time to call your lawyer. Douglas Hart tried to reach for the call button, but Logan was faster. He moved it out of reach and stood between his father and the door. You have no idea what you've done, Douglas said. I built an empire. I built a legacy. I built everything you have. You built it on bodies. I built it on necessity. On doing what needed to be done when lesser men wouldn't. You built it on murder. I built it on survival of the fittest. And you, my weak, sentimental son, just proved you're not fit to survive. Logan stared at the man who'd raised him, who'd taught him to tie a tie and balance a checkbook and never, ever show weakness. Maybe not, he said. But I'm fit to live with myself. The FBI agents arrived exactly 20 minutes later, just as Logan had promised. They were led by Agent Sarah Foster, a woman in her 40s with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Hart, she said to Logan, we'll need your statement. Of course. And the recording? Logan handed over the device. Everything's on there. The confessions, the threats, all of it. Douglas Hart was arrested in his hospital bed, still wearing the gown that made him look smaller and frilier than he'd ever appeared in a courtroom or boardroom. He didn't say a word as they read him his rights. But his eyes never left Logan's face. The story broke within hours. By evening, every news channel in Boston was running the same footage. Douglas Hart being wheeled out of Boston General in handcuffs, his son watching from a window 3 floors up. Camille found Logan in the hospital chapel at midnight. He was sitting in the back pew, staring at the simple wooden cross above the altar. How do you feel? She asked, sliding in beside him. Like I just killed my father. You did what was right. Did I? Or did I just destroy him because he tried to destroy you? Camille was quiet for a long moment. Does it matter? It matters to me. Logan, look at me. She waited until he turned. Your father killed 3 women. At least 3 that we know about. He threatened to kill me. He's spent decades buying and selling justice like it was another commodity. You didn't destroy him. You stopped him. I know. But he's still my father. No. He's still the man who raised you. There's a difference. They sat in the dim chapel, surrounded by the smell of old wood and fresh flowers. Outside, Boston was waking up to the news that one of its most powerful citizens was a killer. What happens now? Logan asked. Now we see if the justice system works better than your father thought it did. I mean with us. Camille smiled, the first real smile she'd managed in days. Now we see if we can build something better than what he left behind. The trial lasted 6 months. Douglas Hart hired the best lawyers money could buy, but money couldn't buy away DNA evidence, recorded confessions, or the testimony of cops who'd finally decided their consciences were worth more than their bribes. Logan testified against his father for 3 days. He told the court about the recording, about the threats, about decades of suspicion that had finally crystallized into horrible certainty. Camille testified too. About the night Douglas had threatened her, about the investigation into her private life, about the complaint that had nearly destroyed her career. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Douglas Hart was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. He was 78 years old. He would die behind bars. Logan was in his apartment when the verdict came down, watching the news with Camille curled up beside him on the couch. When the judge read the sentence, Camille squeezed his hand. "It's over," she said. "Yeah, it's over." But it wasn't over, not really. Logan still had to figure out what to do with Hartbridge Holdings, with the employees who depended on the company, with the fortune that had been built on blood and silence. The board of directors wanted him to step down. The shareholders were in revolt. Stock prices had plummeted. 3 major clients had canceled their contracts. "Maybe I should just let it all burn," Logan said one night as they walked along the Charles River. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want. I used to think I wanted to escape it all. Now I'm free, and I don't know what to do with freedom." Camille stopped walking. The city lights reflected off the water, turning the river into liquid gold. "What did you want to be when you were little?" she asked. "Before I knew I was supposed to be Douglas Hart's son?" "Yeah." Logan smiled, remembering. "Teacher. I wanted to be a history teacher. So do that." "What about the company? The employees?" "Sell it. To someone who'll run it ethically. Use the money to start a foundation or a school or whatever makes you happy." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Logan looked at her, really looked at her. She was wearing jeans and a sweater and no makeup, and she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Not because of how she looked, but because of who she was. Someone who saw solutions instead of problems. Someone who believed in second chances and new beginnings. "You make everything sound possible," he said. "Most things are possible. The question is whether you're brave enough to try them." "Are you brave enough to try them with me?" Camille smiled. "I fell in love with a billionaire and helped bring down his crime boss father. I think I can handle whatever comes next." Logan kissed her there by the river, with Boston glittering around them and the future spreading out like an unwritten story. 1 year later, Logan was standing in front of a classroom full of 8th graders, trying to explain the Boston Tea Party to kids who thought history was boring. "So let me get this straight," one of the students said. "They threw perfectly good tea into the harbor because they were mad about taxes?" "That's right. Couldn't they just have voted or something?" Logan smiled. A year ago, he would have been in a boardroom discussing quarterly profits. Now he was trying to make 13-year-olds care about the American Revolution. "That's exactly the problem," he said. "They couldn't vote. They had no representation in the British Parliament, no voice in the laws that governed them. So they found another way to make their voices heard. By wasting tea, by taking action when the system failed them." After class, Logan walked across the campus of Lincoln Middle School, the public school in Roxbury where Camille had grown up. He'd bought the building 2 years ago when the city threatened to close it due to budget cuts. Now it was fully funded, fully staffed, and fully committed to giving kids like Camille had been a real chance at success. He found her in the nurse's office, taking a student's temperature. "Just a little cold," she was telling the boy. "Drink plenty of water and get some rest tonight, okay?" The kid nodded and shuffled out. Camille turned to Logan with a smile. "How was the Revolutionary War?" "Apparently, I'm teaching a bunch of future economists. They're very concerned about the waste of perfectly good tea." She laughed. "Maybe they have a point. Maybe they do." Logan had sold Hartbridge Holdings 8 months ago to a competitor with a clean reputation and strong ethics policies. All 12,000 employees had kept their jobs. Logan had kept enough money to live comfortably for several lifetimes, and he'd used the rest to start the Morrison Sharp Foundation, named after the 3 women his father had killed. The foundation funded domestic violence shelters, legal aid for women, and whistleblower protection programs. It also funded schools like Lincoln Middle, giving kids in underserved communities the same opportunities that wealth had always bought for the privileged. "How's your patient?" Logan asked, nodding toward the door the student had just left through. "He'll be fine. Kids are resilient." Camille paused. "Speaking of resilient, I got a call today. Good news or bad news? Depends how you look at it." Logan raised an eyebrow. "I'm pregnant." The words hit him like lightning. He stared at her, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "Logan? Say something. How do you feel about it?" "Terrified. Excited. Nauseous." She smiled. "How do you feel about it?" Logan crossed the small office in 2 steps and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and demanded he put her down. "I feel like the luckiest man alive," he said, setting her gently on her feet. "Even though your kid will grow up with a former billionaire teacher for a father and a school nurse for a mother? Especially because of that." That evening, they sat on the couch in their small apartment. They'd moved out of Logan's penthouse months ago, choosing something simpler, warmer, more real. Logan had his hand on Camille's still flat stomach, marveling at the idea that a whole person was growing in there. "What do you think they'll be like?" he asked. "Stubborn," Camille said immediately. "Definitely stubborn. Look at their parents. Smart, though, and kind. They'll be kind because they'll grow up knowing that kindness matters more than power. Think they'll forgive us for all the drama that brought us together?" Camille was quiet for a moment. "I think they'll understand that sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. That sometimes you have to break everything apart before you can build something beautiful." Logan thought about his father, alone in a prison cell, probably still believing he'd done what was necessary. He thought about the women who'd died, who would never get to see their children grow up or their dreams come true. He thought about the choice he'd made, to turn away from power and toward love, toward justice, toward something that couldn't be bought or sold or corrupted. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Everything we went through?" "Never," Camille said without hesitation. "Do you?" Logan looked around their small apartment with its mismatched furniture and overflowing bookshelves and photos of friends and students on every surface. He thought about his classroom full of kids who asked hard questions and demanded honest answers. He thought about the foundation that was helping women find their voices and demand justice. He thought about Camille, brilliant and brave and carrying his child. "Never," he said. 6 months later, their daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday morning. Elena Rose Hart came into the world screaming her displeasure at the bright lights and cold air, but she quieted the moment Camille held her. "She's perfect," Logan whispered, touching one tiny fist with his finger. "She's ours," Camille said, and somehow that was even better. Douglas Hart died in prison 3 months later. "A heart attack," the warden said. "Quick and quiet." Logan felt nothing when he got the call. No grief, no relief, just a kind of empty closure. He didn't go to the funeral. Instead, he spent that day with Camille and Elena, walking through the public garden and talking about the future. About the school they wanted to build together. About the foundation that was growing every year. About Elena's first word, which had been mama but sounded suspiciously like more. "She's going to be demanding," Camille said, bouncing Elena gently as they walked. "Wonder where she gets that from. Definitely her father's side." Logan laughed. "Says the woman who brought down a billionaire crime boss. I had help. You had courage." They found a bench by the pond and sat watching the ducks swim in lazy circles. Elena fell asleep in Camille's arms, tiny and perfect, and completely unaware that her parents had once been the center of Boston's biggest scandal. "Think she'll want to know the whole story someday?" Logan asked. "All of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It's quite a story." "It's our story," Camille said. "And it's not over yet." Logan looked at his wife and daughter, at the city spreading out around them, at the life they'd built from the ashes of everything that had come before. No, he agreed. It's just beginning. Years later, when Elena was old enough to ask questions, they would tell her about her grandfather. Not just the monster he'd become, but the man who'd raised her father, who'd taught him both what to do and what never to do. They would tell her about the women who'd died, and why their names were on the foundation building where Mommy and Daddy worked. They would tell her that power without conscience was the most dangerous thing in the world, but that love with courage could change everything. And Elena would grow up knowing that her parents had chosen truth over comfort, justice over wealth, and each other over everything else that the world said mattered. She would grow up knowing that the best legacies aren't built on money or power or fear. They're built on love. And love, Elena would learn, was the only thing that lasted forever. The end. If this story of love, courage, and justice touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps us bring you tales that matter. Which scene moved you the most? Let us know, we love hearing from you.